Hello, everybody. I'm Christian Frehner. I'm coming from Switzerland. I'm 66.5-year-old. I'm a corporate member from FIGU Switzerland, and it's a pleasure for me to be here to talk with you and for you also. And perhaps in a couple of 100 years, this meeting will be down there at the shore. There is a huge building, a dome, a theater. Perhaps this will be filled sometime in the future. But now we are starting, everything is starting from small to big, and now this is a part of this development. I've noticed that the time is rushing, and so I think I have to shorten my prepared lecture, because I think it will be important that we can discuss. And so there was fear that I will talk for 3 hours, and so we only have left less. But I start now. As you could read from on the website, the title of this presentation is Applying the Spiritual Teaching in Everyday Life. And I'm doing under this title. I have already done a couple of lectures at the Schmidt-Rütti, at the Seminars Silver Star Center. I think it's important to focus of what can I profit from the spiritual teaching and what can I implement in everyday life. I see most of people here seem to be familiar. Is someone here who is here for the first time from FIGU? Is someone among around? Not. So there are no, yeah, okay, but I got the impression. Spiritual teaching is a term, and this is the main objective actually from FIGU, disseminating the spiritual teaching. And at the time when the Goblet of the Truth was written, Billy was expanding this term somewhat. It's an ancient term to teaching of the truth, teaching of the spirit, teaching of life. And this three-part explanation covers actually everything that exists. And we could, for instance, the teaching of the truth could cover all that which is reality. In other words, for instance, the universe, various dimensions, time, space, nature's law. This is a part of the teaching of the truth. And the teaching of the spirit covers, for instance, spirit consciousness, psyche, subconsciousness, unconsciousness, reincarnation, these factors of life. And the teaching of life covers, in my opinion, the interactions between human beings and the environment. Also, we here in this room with everyone, and also factors like love, peace, strife, hate, grief, virtues, all these kinds of interactions between human beings. And so you see this is covering actually everything from chemistry, physics, to mathematics, to love, to helping each other, so everything. And contrary to religion, which is a closed, encapsulated system that cannot be expanded, the spiritual teaching is actually an open system, a teaching that will never cease to be terminated or to be limited, because it covers everything that is an only reality, of course. The focus of my talk today could be summarized with a question like, how can I cope with the demands, challenges, and threats, etc. of our time, be it in my private realm or with regard to what's going on in the world? Whoever concerns him or herself with the more than 46,000 pages of writings, material that is available from FIGU or Billy Meyer. Most of it is from Billy Meyer, of course, will sooner or later be confronted with the term or topic of prophecies and predictions. And I think most of you have already written and I read about these prophecies and predictions. And this is beside, of course, the evidence Billy has produced in the mid-70s of the last century, photos, videos, metal samples, and so. This was actually a project, so to say. From the beginning, it was to cause a UFO controversy in the UFO field, and this, of course, today has vanished into the background. We are not concentrating on the ufological field or department and so, but we are focusing on the spiritual teaching. Prophecies, while perhaps the thought of extraterrestrials coming to Earth can be accepted by many people, it's a different matter regarding prophecies and predictions, because especially a prediction is hard to accept. It's something. A prediction is an information that for 100% confirms the future, something that is happening in the future, and accepting the possibility that the prediction can exist requires also that time travel is accepted, and time travel involves also acceptance that there are extraterrestrials are coming here to visit us. And since this has been proven to be the case, then also time travel must be accepted. And if time travel is a fact, it's a logical chain, then also predictions are possible. If you have, and since you have read these prophecies and predictions, then of course we are facing not a true harmonious future, so to say, and there are some feelings creeping up in the back that are connected with all kinds of sorrow, could say, and some concerns about what's doing this for me. But actually, even without these prophecies and predictions, human beings could come to the conclusion that there are some happenings threatening on the horizon of time that will bring great problems to us if you, for instance, look at overpopulation. I will quote here a sentence from the 21-year-old Edward Albert Meyer. In 1958, he wrote and began a longer list of predictions with these words, and he said, as sentence number 1, my eyes and mind see things of the future which will take place from today, the year 1958, and therefore will be. And then in sentence 127 he wrote, and in the third millennium, the time comes when big parts of the continents disappear and the people will have to flee to the mountains. Yet their sense of the catastrophes will only be of a short duration, because they will forget everything again quickly and therefore make an effort to do much rebuilding, because they are already creating phantasmagoria through movies and television, as well as later through a worldwide netting of computers and electronics, through which they deceive themselves and see things that do not exist, and are only visually determined for the eye. Subsequently, their sense for reality disappears, and they can no longer distinguish between reality and fiction, whereby they lose themselves more and more in the labyrinth of life, while those who produce phantasms commercially, as well as religious and sectarian phantasms, have an easy game with the people of faith, who they deceive in every possible manner and make them into humble beings like cringing dogs. It's a rather gloomy information from 6 years ago, and I think we will see, actually we see the beginning of this prophecy or prediction to unfold if we see how many people are living or are using so much time for looking in the screens before them, or playing computer games, and also movies, immerse themselves into movies. And so I think we are in the first stages of this prophecy or prediction coming into existence. As we know, and what can be deduced by looking at the current situation on our planet, the prophecies and predictions which Billy repeatedly has sent to governments, newspapers and radio and TV stations in many countries were not heeded. The prevailing taboo and avoidance to discuss the overpopulation catastrophe in the media clearly demonstrates that those in the highest and inferior offices of governments, multinational companies, military and religions, etc., are unwilling and incapable of taking action at the roots of the problem. In the next FIGU-Zeitzeichen, that's a periodical that we are publishing 2 times a month, you can read that the Quetzal is talking exactly about this. And he says, he said at the end of July of this year, that there are really efforts by many organizations and so to prevent that the overpopulation issue is discussed in the media. They are really, because as you know, the multinational companies, they want to sell products. The more people, the more products they sell. And if this topic is discussed broadly in the public, you must also discuss the measures to be taken at the root, and then it becomes uneasy for these people. And it's easier to talk about the symptoms like the climate change, which is actually a climate destruction. It's not a climate change, it's a climate destruction, because over 75% of this climate change has been caused by humankind. And in light of this future, we have to ask ourselves, or you will asking yourself, what can we do, or what should we do, or rather, what can I do? Of course, we cannot get the attention of Mr. Trump or other governmental presidents and so, but we can do anyway something valuable for humankind's future fate. Because we people here have our free will, we have our thinking capacity, and it's up to us regarding our lives, whether we are holding our steering wheel, whether we are gearing up or press down the accelerator or brake pedal. So it's up to us. It has never been the masses that have brought a change or progress in the human history. It has been individuals, wise persons, philosophers, some politicians, some scientists, and so, who were as like the locomotive in a train, who pulled actually humankind into the future. And therefore, the message is that actually it's individuals. It's always individuals who are responsible for bringing forward human progress and development. And since we cannot change what has happened in the past, we have to focus what we are doing now in this present time. And probably you know the present has a duration of 2.7 seconds. And in these 2.7 seconds, we are doing everything that will follow in the future and will all the time fall into the past. There has been Pericles, that has been a Greek philosopher. I think he lived about 2,500 years ago. And he said, it doesn't matter, or it's said that he has said. I don't know, I cannot, perhaps it's not a fact. It doesn't matter to predict the future, but we should be prepared for it. And it's not a stupid sentence, I would say. Perhaps I could say, yeah, okay, that's fine, but it's good. If we have knowledge about the future, then we should heed this information, especially when it's true and it's in line with reality, and reality of something that's not happened. That seems to be a contradiction, but actually everything that can be seen in the future and is a prediction has happened in the future and is determined now. And this has to do with the law of cause and effect. And if you can go back into the past, this means this could be grasped better, perhaps, by human beings, to go back in time, because if you synchronize with the light that has been emitted 2,000 years ago and goes out to the universe, perhaps you can get this vibration. And so, but if you are accepting the fact that it's possible to go into the past, this means also that at that time, when the person from the future comes to the past, means that at that time already the future has existed. And this is hard to understand, but it's really like this, and this doesn't mean that the future is, that the free will of the human being is actually not something that does not exist. It's exactly the other way around. We are constantly influencing and creating the future in the present time. I shorten here a little bit my presentation, and I would like to give you a little list, or present a little list of things that you could do in light of the unfolding future. For instance, these are more mundane proposals. Learn to cook, for instance, could be a proposal, because I remember when I was young, there were men who could not cook. They said I could perhaps put an egg into a pan that's the only thing. I cut bread and so. And I think in the meantime this has changed a little bit. But what I want to say is people should start to do everything that is necessary for their surviving. And if one learns to cook, you have to think about, what do I cook when I have no electricity, when I don't have my refrigerator, no frozen food, what will I do? Because there is a whole lot of consequences is hidden behind this, or storing up a certain amount of non-perishable food and water, household products. If you have no electricity in a mega city, in a city in general, depending on the country you live in, you will have problems as soon as one day you have no electricity to get food, so, and other things. So this should also be taken in mind. So generally, I think that's my opinion. If it's possible to avoid living in a megacity, especially megacities at the seashore, seashore, you should avoid to live there, because panic can be greater in great masses than in a small scale surrounding or location. And of course, avoiding living in places like San Francisco or Naples in Italy is something really to be considered. Living generally at the seashore or on steep slopes or on waterfronts is also intelligent to avoid living there, and generally avoiding to live in earthquake-prone regions. And there are still people living at the slopes of volcanoes, not non-sleeping volcanoes, non-dormant volcanoes, and then this is dangerous. And if you are able to buy a house or already own a house, then not all people can move away from where they live, but perhaps they can make their housing earthquake prone or more firm or so, and also perhaps better protected against hurricanes and the like. In a colder climate, insulate your house well, and possibly add a wood stove as an additional cooking and heating alternative. And if your house is in danger regarding forest fires, don't have the trees just until your house. So it depends on the climate, on how dangerous everything is. Generally, make your life or base your life onto your own efforts. Don't plan to live on social welfare. Find a job, even if it's hard. Perseverance, keep on. And if you don't find a job, be creative and to invent something on your own. Do something on your own, and put some money aside is also good, of course, or some in cash also, if you have spare cash. Depends. Not all people have a great income. But these are just, these I think are proposals or that you know already, thinking so. These are not all of them are easy to implement or make a reality, but I think even more important are the consciousness-based consciousness-based measures that you have to take, precautionary measures, and, which make sense. And in recent time, there's in psychology, there is a term often used, perhaps you heard it already, it's called resilience. And resilience is, can be connected, among other things, with the following: ability to cope with stress, strain, and pressure, flexibility, adaptive capacity, resisting power of force, ability to recover. And all of these abilities are mental factors and are needed for what has been said regarding being prepared for the future. And resilience is a factor, one of the different factors of our consciousness and our psyche. And more of this you find in Billy's book, The Might of the Thoughts, which is available. It's Billy's book. Huh? And it's our thinking which decides whether we are keeping our head above the sea surface or whether we let ourselves drown in the whirling waters of our problems. Because we don't have to look too far into the future, to fall overpopulation, so there are plenty of problems in our everyday life that we have to face, and we should not forget these things over the wide or far look into the future. And immersing oneself in these problems can lead to all kinds of negative, destructive results and symptoms like, for instance, deafness, unable to think about the personal bright future, generally to a drainage of energy, resulting in grief and depression, which ultimately can lead to suicide. Hopelessness is another psyche-impairing factor. Anger and rage, that's then a different direction, which can lead to anarchy, violence, or aggression and application of violence and destruction, and also addiction to all kinds of substances, as we monitor, and so on. And there is a great danger in many societies is the use of all kinds of drugs, of stimulants. So many people are not capable anymore to have good feelings from within themselves. And this means, actually, I think this has to do that they are not aware that with their thoughts they are producing their feelings. They have, it's like some form of craving, of addiction. They have to use substances to feel better or to shut off themselves from reality, of course, because they are not capable or able to face reality as it is and cope with the problems. To keep one's head above the sea surface and to be prepared requires intelligent strategies, and to uncouple oneself from society and the environment is no lasting intelligent way to cope with the negative outside influences. Also, to be a hermit can function for a certain time, or to not read any newspapers anymore, just look out into the garden, stay at home, and so this may be good for calming down if you had stress and so, but in as a long-term strategy. This is not sensible, because one day there may be a surprise and coming from outside and you are not prepared. So having an eye on surroundings and into the future is of course advisable. And this is not easy today. If I mention the term fake news, and fake news are not, and manipulation is not only done by the governments, the media, and so, but also by so-called alternative groups, and so there are a lot of false claims and delusional Behauptungen, claims, and so, and conspiracy theories going around. So it's important to have kind of a beacon to orientate oneself. And this beacon, I think, in my opinion, is the spiritual teaching and information that we are receiving from the Plejaren people, what's written in the content notes. And what we also should not forget to think about is that besides negative things and problems, there is also all the time there are good and positive things also. This is there is some danger that if people are focusing, or FIGU people, for instance, or other people focusing on the gloomy perspectives of the future. It's gloomy, that's a reality, but we should never forget that there are also a great deal of positive things happening. But of course, the meaning of the prophecies and the predictions is not to predict or prophesize. The prophecy, the good things, but of course it makes sense to inform about the things that could happen if nothing is changed, in the case of prophecies, or if it's clear that this and that negative will happen, to give those people who are aware of this and want to heed this information, to make it possible for them to be not there where something terrible will happen, or to give, to make strategies for avoiding certain happenings occurring in their life. Okay, I go down here. But how do I said regarding our thoughts, creating our feelings, and from our feelings and thoughts together the actions that are resulting. It's this way. How do we control our thoughts? And this is, of course, not something instantly. You cannot push a certain spot here in the shoulder, and then you are in control of your thoughts. It's not like this. It's not an easy thing. It's a long process, actually. And this process requires attentiveness, perseverance, as well as the will and the motivation. Without these factors, you will not, unless you are talented from the beginning, from birth, you will not have good results. And in this respect, it's also it's necessary to get in control of your thoughts, to think about and find out the real meaning of life. Why do I live? And it's also important, and what's about death, because these things are belonging together, life and death. And all too of course, if you're very religious, then it's clear. You come to heaven eternally, play harp there, and hope not to go to hell. So to prevent to go this, you do all kinds of funny things, and so that you hope you will not go down to eternal heat and so. But this fear of death is behind many subconsciously below the human psyche, and many actions. And if you are not getting to learn the real sense of life and what are the factors around death, then you cannot come to a state of calmness, of being balanced. It appears to be, of course, if you're very religious, you have faith, and you can remain in this state. And I've seen an old woman. I was at her bed when she died. She was very religious. She was waiting for God to receive her into heaven and so on. She had a calm death. Of course, that's possible. But really, basically, you need to have real knowledge about death. And this can be found, for instance, in Billy's book, Wiedergeburt, Leben, Sterben, Tod und Trauer. And this has helped me quite a lot. Of course, until now it's only available in German, but I think this is a very important book to be translated, especially, and also the book, The Fight Against Depression. That book will someday in the future will be the standard book on depression, become the standard book on depression, I think, but this will be long after Billy's death. However, just reading these books, all books, is just one thing, but the main thing and the crucial thing is what will I do with what I have read? You have to think about what you read. You cannot read a book from beginning to end in 10 hours. So then say, now I'm a teacher of the spiritual teaching. And so this is not like this, because that's belief. You have to start thinking over, compare with everyday life, with your neighbors, with other people, with that information, this book. It's a huge puzzle, and you have to think about, find logic in everything, and always compare with what's happening in nature and within yourself, with your own experiences, what's in line with this. And so over time you get a puzzle where you find your truth. And your truth is, of course, not final. It's not just one block. You will notice it will constantly growing. It will constantly grow. And if you read the book anew, I didn't understand this last time. Now I understand. And so it's a work in progress for your entire life. It's the same with peace, for instance. There's so much talking about peace in the world. You are peace conferences and everything, but all this is just shouting into the desert, because peace must start within each human being. And as long as a person has not attained peace within him or herself, it's not possible for peace to occur or result on the whole world. And so, based on this, there will be a long time until there will be lasting peace on this planet, because the requirements for this are not given. There's no teaching about this process. Education in school is lacking from A to Z, from A to Z, yeah, in many ways. And also education at home from the parents is is lacking quite substantial values that are not taught to the children, because it would be important that even the small children, that all of their questions would be answered from procreation to birth, living, dying, all this, the whole life. At young age, children should be actually informed, if they are asking, of course, not just the whole spiritual teaching put up on their brains at one time, but waiting until they have a question and then just answer this question. But this would also require that the parents are knowing the facts about this, and this is also something that needs quite a long time to come into reality. Hundreds of years, needs hundreds of years. Here I have translated something from Billy. I leave this here. Actually, everything I've told you until now is embedded in the eternally valid and basic creational law, namely the law of cause and effect. And closely connected is the creational recommendations that each human being is the recommendation that each human being is exercising self-responsibility. And what I have told you about creating peace within oneself, and exactly the same matters regarding responsibility. You cannot expect others to be responsible if you are neglecting to heed your own. First and foremost, a human being has an obligation to fulfill his or her duty as a human being by exerting self-responsibility, which means to be responsible for all of one's thoughts and resulting feelings and actions. To come second is the duty to take care of the life forms around oneself, from the fellow human beings, animals, plants, and environment as a whole, to the planet itself. And the slogan here is to live and help live. To live and help live is the logical motto or slogan, not to live and let live. To live and let live is actually, I don't mind what you are doing, I leave you, and so, but to live and help live means to take one's responsibility, but also to have a look for the other people, for the fellow human beings and the nature and everything, because life is not just human beings, life is everything that is enlivened by spirit, and which ultimately, of course, is connected with us. Each one of us here is connected with all other human beings, the whole universe, and is connected with all life forms, with all animals, because beneath the surface of our existence there is the spiritual realm, and this is connected, and the battery comes, the energy comes from the spiritual realm. I think I come here to the end now before we go to the discussion. And I have here a quote in light of self-responsibility, autonomy, self-dependence, and self-reliance. It is required that these values are learned from infancy, as I said. And each human being should heed the word of the prophets of old, as written in the book Om, in Canon 29, verse 36 to 39. Here it is written, and also be like the ant, small, which you observe. So you are not lazy ones who idle like the blighters and scapegraces and what dawdlers. Dawdlers. It's a word not in common use, perhaps. And like the ant, so the human beings shall also be diligent and industrious, therefore productive and progressing, and that they also are making provisions, and likewise that they create and earn their daily bread, and also during summer and autumn store their provisions, that they have food and drink in winter. But you, lazy ones, how long lay you in slothfulness, and practices idleness, without doing your work and bringing in your harvest? When will you arise from your rotting sleep? But if you want to, then sleep still a little, slumber a little, clasp your hands together, so you sleep and walk in idleness. But do not be surprised if poverty overtakes you like a fast runner and lack like an armed man. And yesterday evening, I was walking around here in Toronto, and I bought this book here, Lord of the Rings, and I close my presentation with what I read here. I wish it need not have happened in my time, said Frodo. So do I, said Gandalf, and so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. Tolkien. So now we're open for discussion.